Before we sleep, many of us replay the day through a lens of what went wrong. The words we wish we had said, the moments we think we failed, and night after night, that lens quietly becomes our truth. But what if bedtime could be a doorway instead? A moment where we teach our nervous system a different story about who we are and how we showed up. Welcome to Inner Light. I'm your host, Shreya, and today we are exploring a simple yet deeply transformative practice that helps us relate to ourselves with more compassion, agency, and hope. I'm joined by Kerisma Vere, and the author of Ways I Showed Up for Myself, a 60-day self gratitude practice. This conversation is about how self gratitude journaling, especially at bedtime, can gently rewire how we process our lives and how we see ourselves. Charisma, I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thanks, Shreya. It's great to be here.
And I'm really curious, like what was happening in your life when you first turned toward self-gratitude, not as a concept, but as a daily practice for yourself?
Um, well, actually, it sort of stems back to I had a bit of a, I say a bit of it. I had sort of like a pretty intense breakdown in 2018. And, everything I had done about building a stronger, healthier, relationship with myself just kind of crumbled apart. And, because it was, well, what it was built on a foundation of, trauma, and also my self-worth was really tied into the things I was doing, as opposed to just like a basic sense of who I was. So I returned to relating to myself the way I had when I was younger, which was very reactionary, very harsh, very judgmental, very, very critical. And I returned to a place of, kind of constant threat, where my mind was constantly, scanning my environment and, my day and my actions and my behaviors for threat, like what didn't I get done? What was coming up that I had to, like, that I was scared of, or I was worried I wouldn't be able to, manage the way that I needed to be. So, yeah, I sort of had returned to a place where I was, really judging myself harshly as a way of trying to survive, because I was under such threat. And, yeah, just relating to my life and my environment from that harsher critical, threat lens that I think many of us are actually familiar with, if not all the time, that at least some of the times.
Yes, I think that already says so much. Like often these days, practices are born not from like theory, but from a moment where something inside us knows the old way is not sustainable anymore. And also, when people hear gratitude journaling, many think of listening things outside themselves. I'm really curious how self gratitude shifts that focus and what people tend to misunderstand about it.
Yeah, that word is a little bit of a buzzword in our society, right? And as I say, it's not my place to denounce gratitude, because gratitude is incredibly important. But when we are being grateful for everything in our lives except for ourselves, and not recognizing all the different ways that we show up for ourselves, and all the different things that are meaningful, the places that we struggle, when we don't have that more attuned relationship to ourselves, that gratitude that we have for the other things, the external things, is, actually sort of ends up being a little bit, don't really wanna say superficial, but not as deep as it could be, because we need that solid core foundation of appreciation and love for ourselves. And, like, if you've ever been in a relationship or had a friend or a family member or even a partner, that really sees you and really hears you and gets your struggles and your triumphs and all the rest of that, that can create this feeling like, "Oh, I can breathe," and it does kinda make the rest of the world brighter to us, and then that gratitude we have for things outside of ourselves, in my opinion, can be more genuine. But when we're, spending most of our time with ourselves, or people that don't acknowledge or really see what is going on for us, then there is an ache and a pain and a almost a void inside of ourselves that where if we're making affirmations towards, like, "Oh, I'm grateful for the roof over my head," or this, we probably are, but it's probably falling a little bit hollow because we don't have that solid foundation with ourselves first, you know?
Yes, like, so instead of appreciating life from a distance, this practice invites us into relationship with ourselves that feels like an important distinction.
Yeah, and I personally, from my own experience, I just think it's so foundational to quality of life and quality of connections with other people, and also in creating any kind of lasting change. The gratitude practice, I put it into its own companion journal because it was an exercise I shared in chapter 7 of the Light Switch Myth when we were looking at compassionate practices. And I know for me, my whole life, I wanted to have a better relationship with myself. I wanted to get to know myself. I wanted to feel love for myself. All these kinds of things that, like I had a cognitive understanding and a desire for, but honestly, I was jumping around trying different things thinking that they would work. And I didn't ever run into anything that was like actually a very gentle and realistic way of starting to nurture the type of relationship with myself that I wanted, and I think self-love is not a it's not necessarily a noun, it's an adjective, it comes from how we treat ourselves, how we respond. It's not something that we just, look in the mirror and say, I love you once, and then all of a sudden we go from this place of being very uncomfortable with who we are to, being able to embrace ourselves with compassion. But that feeling of love for ourselves, I think actually comes from learning how to have that attuned relationship with ourselves and in tandem with learning how to take care of ourselves, but we can't really take care of ourselves in a true way if we don't actually know what our real internal world is, what our real is experience is. Because if we're responding to who we used to be, or we're responding to who we wanted to be, that's not meeting ourselves in the moment. And so then that ends up being a relationship where we don't seem um felt or seen, and the solutions that we come up, they don't really land at home because they don't meet us in that moment, you know?
Yes, I absolutely agree. And also, why do you think our minds so naturally default to a thread based review of the day when we are lying to bed?
Well, for many of us, we're kind of really busy throughout the day, and we lie down, and that can be sometimes the first moment we have for reflection. And I think for many, many of us, we've been in survival our whole life, so it's that skill of being able to identify, mistakes, areas for concerns, upcoming things. It's not necessarily a bad one because it actually has allowed us to stay safe in many ways. Like I'm kind of grateful to that part of me because it was always seeking to do better. It was always sort of trying to make sure that I was safe and secure and the things that needed to be taken care of were taken care of, and it wanted me to do better. But the way that part of me goes about doing that is just not supportive to me anymore. It probably had much more efficacy when I was younger, but nowadays it's just like I recognize I'm more in touch as like, "Yeah, I don't like to be talked to that way. I don't like to be treated that way." And I know for me, if I go to bed in a place of threat, like going through my day and ripping it apart to find every little place that I messed up or didn't do well enough, that erodes my confidence, it erodes my sense of safety and security, interferes with my sleep, which then leaves me even more compromised the next day, in a position where trying to do the things that I feel like I need to do is even more difficult, and it creates kind of a loop. But I do think it just sort of it comes from, our upbringing, our society, having to, move through life from a place of, we're let's face it, we're all still animals and we're trying to survive, you know? you don't pay the rent, you're gonna end up on the street, and that's pretty friggin' scary. So, there is an element of truth to being able to look around for threat and danger and make sure that we're doing the things that we need to do, but we can my experience is we can balance that actually with, compassion and nurturing and encouragement, as our motivation and move out of, move out of survival and into more of a kind of a thriving state, like where we could touch base with our nervous systems like that, "Hey, I'm okay." And the self-gratitude practice that was introduced to me by my counselor that I did for many years, and I'm just back to doing it again now, it's just it helps build that security because, like, I'm asking, "What did I do today that was difficult for me?" And where did I show up for myself? Where did I maintain a behavior? Where did I show some courage? What was really, like, hard for me and I need to acknowledge? What was I able to, like, let go of? And, I like to laugh because it could be I can give myself credit for having a donut, and I can give myself credit for not having a donut, depending on the circumstances and depending on what my needs in that moment were, right? But that's such a personal thing. Only I will know, was having the donut, like, not the good decision, or was having the donut the kind, compassionate decision? And that changes moment to moment. So it is a very private practice, but when we start to look at our days like that, we're starting to have this more secure relationship with ourselves and our lives. It's just because, like, "Oh, look, I was able to do that, and that was really hard." Maybe it was a tiny little thing, but now our brains are getting rewired, we're starting to see things differently. There's that sense of agency, there's that little bit of hope, and there's that understanding like, "Oh, hey, okay, I made it through a struggle, or I made it through a difficult thing, or, I was able to change something or let something go." And it's no longer in this black or white kind of perfect, thing from survival, but it's just like a real meeting ourselves where we're at and recognizing all the different ways that we showed up for ourselves in the day. And it's similar to, like, another person. If we have that sense that they are there for us, and they're going to be there for us, we relax, our nervous system's relax, we feel safer, we figure, I'm going through some stuff right now and, um, some medical stuff and, like, it's making such a huge difference to know that, A, I got my back, and that I have a few other people too that, like, they're gonna be there for me. So I know that even though there is, some threat going on in my world that is, legitimate, I have the support, from myself and others that I'll be okay. I'll be okay no matter what kinda happens, So that's the other threat lens, the critical lens is we're giving our sense that we're not okay. We're looking for every little area that we're not okay. We're often not, we're exaggerating it or we're not seeing it clearly. So it does seem like, we're just going to fall off the world at any moment because, oh my goodness, I didn't get around to doing the dishes today or making that phone call I thought I was supposed to make, but it, so yeah, focusing on how we do show up for ourselves and which isn't denying the struggle by any means. But as most of us have experienced with a person who could really be there for us when we're in struggle, it helps. It doesn't make the struggle go away, but it helps.
Yes. Like what we're hearing is that bedtime becomes a mirror of our nervous system, and without intention, that mirror often reflects vigilance rather than care. And also, how does this thread based processing tend to shape the way people relate to themselves over time, especially if it's happening night after night?
Yeah, well, I know that the critic lens, it just wears us down, and it adds layers. The sleep is so, so, so important, And, it's similar to some people will watch, very violent or the news or other kinds of things right before bed, and I don't believe in that either because I believe in trying to bring in some calmness and some hope and some gentleness at bedtime to support me getting a better sleep, instead of inundating my, subconscious with all of that kind of, threat oriented types of things. But yeah, if we can, Whether it's just, like, even asking yourself, like, one little thing, like, where what went right today, you know? What went right today? And it's like we can build on that, you know? When I started doing this, I was in a place of really poor mental health. Breakdown I had was quite similar to a brain injury, and I'd had amnesia and all kinds of difficulties, so I was really starting, at the bottom or the very far back as far as self-care and adult functioning went, you know? So these were tiny little things like, brushing my teeth once in the week, you know, or, using a little bit less substances or managing to feed myself one time during the day, or managing to just like, um, offer myself one kind word or reach out to one friend and like all these tiny little things. So it did two things for me. It gave me an appreciation of everybody else. Like I just never judge whatever it is you're struggling with. Like, I have some empathy for because I know what it's like to struggle with things that other people take for granted. But it also, what it slowly kind of did was it gave me the platform, the practice area to be compassionate with myself and to start to respond to myself differently. Where, so in the weeks and months leading up to starting this practice, I was like, I if I brushed my teeth, I never gave myself credit for it. What I would do would I would go like, you can't have credit for that because you should be doing it 2 times a day, every day. So, you don't get credit for doing it once tonight. Like, that's just not good enough. So, no matter where I showed up for myself or what efforts towards change, I was always beating myself down. I was never allowing myself to take credit for it, which, is just such a defeatist kind of an environment of feeling like heavy and guilt and shame and just like, being scorned by myself no matter what I did. And it did not support growth. Whereas when I started to come in, it's just like, no, okay, fine. I will acknowledge. And you know what? It was really, really hard to brush my teeth tonight. I didn't want to brush my teeth tonight, but I got up and I brushed my teeth tonight. So I'm going to put all that judgment and guilt and shame about how often I should be doing all that. I'm just going to put it aside and I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a internal hug for doing it. Thank you, Charisma, for doing that. It is important. It's important to me. It has felt really horrible that I haven't been able to do it. So thank you for doing it. And then what that does is, for me and others is it grows this different kind of environment. So like there's less pressure, it's like, oh, there's less pressure. So then I found that the momentum to do those types of things started to snowball in the direction that I wanted to. And the things that had been so impossible and so hard to do got a little bit easier, because I was building on each win. I was experiencing a little bit of success, a little bit of pride, a little bit of agency, a little bit of hope, and those things started to really grow. I like to think of it a bit of as a garden, I was watering those things with compassion and care and understanding, and acknowledgement and validation and they started to grow and grow and grow. And now I'm at much higher level functioning types of goals, but I apply the same things. And then when I slip backwards with places, same thing. I bring in that compassion and then like, okay, like let's acknowledge what we did do today. It's not that we don't want to have a look at maybe the things we avoided or we didn't do that needed doing because those things are important too. We don't want to just forget about our responsibilities, but we maybe can benefit from starting to learn how to relate to ourselves in a different way. And it was certainly my experience that all of the, like, oh, write affirmations on your mirrors or be grateful for this or, just make up your mind or all those kinds of things. They never like worked for me. Whereas most of the things I've found to, improve my mental health and my quality of life have been little things that I bring in and that I practice and that they grow into something much more healing and significant in my life after that practice. And it's not from doing it perfectly. It is from coming back and doing it consistently. In the light switch myth, I like to talk about the 80-20%. I try to do things on point 80% of the time I allow for 20% of the time to not do it. That helps me not get into resentment or rebellion with myself. And and then when life is going really difficult or stuff comes up, I just lower that bar. And like, even if we're 40% on point and 60% off, it's just like, let's just adjust this based on my needs. But perseverance and consistency are amazing things. They're not amazing things when we pair them with perfectionism and black and white thinking.
Yeah, I think it's striking how something so quiet and private can shape our confidence, our hope, even our sense of agency in the next day. And like, what tends to happen when people miss days, feel resistance, or notice self judgment creeping back to, into the practice?
Well, in my own life, I'm like, okay, well, this is a great opportunity to practice the things I coach other people or have written books about. But it's just like, so I started back up with when I published the ways I showed up for my self journal, I was proud and I showed it to my counselor and she's like, oh, that's amazing. That's great. She's, are you doing it? And I was like, oh, okay. Yes, I guess I should do it too. Cause I had gotten out of the habit of doing it. So I started doing it. And that was about a week ago or a little bit more, and I think I only have 3 pages filled out so far. So, this is how I approach that. It's like, okay, there are nights where everything lines up, and I'm like, "Okay," I keep it on my bed for one thing, so that it's right here, so that I'm reminded to do it before bed. And like I said, I've had some other stuff going on. So the nights I haven't done it, I don't beat myself up. I know now from my own experience with all the different kinds of changes I have made that I don't need to do it perfectly. What I do need to do is be kind and gentle with myself when I'm not able to do it. To recognize that, and rather than that narrow critical lens, which just takes things out of context, right? And wants to say, wow, you are a loser. We'll just put it right out there, right? Um, and I can come in like, no, no, let's look at what's going on. It was a really long day. I'm really tired. Like I did a lot of other kinds of things or do. So let's look at the big picture. And then I come back to, well, it is important. This is a routine I want to get back into. This is a useful thing for me to be doing right now. So then when I noticed the book at I weigh in with that resistance. Like, what's the resistance about? Is it just like a little bit of you know, uh uncomfortable, um I just don't want to, for not really a very deep kind of reason, or is there a real reason here that I would rather respect? And then that's where I play around with consistency, is that anytime it's just like a little bit of a reluctance, it's not really deeply rooted in any real strong reason not to do it, then I just like take a deep breath, pick up the book and do it. And if it's got a much more significant reason why I'm not doing whatever the thing is that I had in, then I will listen. But what I have really, really found, and I was so reluctant. I didn't believe this stuff. I didn't. But what I have found is that when I mess up, so to speak, or when I fall off track, or when I don't do the things that are important to me to do, if I can come in with kindness and compassion, but not that checking out that those things aren't important to me, not that justification of, like, but without the putting myself down or the guilt or the shame or the jumping to those horrible conclusions that I'll never be able to do this, or that there's something inherently wrong with me. You can just come in with some love and compassion and go, "Okay, let's try again tomorrow, okay? I know this is important to you." Or, I can ask myself, "How can I help you with this?" Right? Like, if the journal was over there on in the other side of the room and I wasn't getting to it, I would probably move the journal over to my bed, right? If I was having too high of expectations of myself, I would wanna adjust that, right? If there was things I wasn't comfortable writing about um on my own right now, then I would probably, like, save that stuff for therapy or a coach or something like that. So it's just like that compassion is when we don't follow through on the things that we had set up for ourselves to follow through. if we can do radical acceptance and compassion, we can come in and we can actually problem solve, you know? Is the goal one that I want to keep for one thing, you know? Is this an internalized want and desire for myself that is important to me? If so, okay, what can I do to support myself doing it, you know? And then again, if we could just be more realistic, all of us, about change, we don't need to get it perfect. You know, like for me, the big aha moment was understanding that I can't get most things perfect. Like that perfection goal of doing things 100% of the time perfectly, it's not possible. So I tend to laugh when I notice that parts of me coming up and I'm like, well, that's fantastic that you have such higher aspirations, but maybe we can adjust the goal because that's not actually even possible. And we're living now in a fantasy land, and could we maybe, set goals and plans for ourselves that are possible as opposed to shooting for a standard that actually isn't possible? And then the great thing about that is, like, um, I can right now, like, the fact that I've had as many days off not writing in my journal as I have writing in it, I'm allowed to give myself permission. Fantastic, Charisma, you're being human, and because it's not coming from a place of, shame or guilt, it's coming from a place of, like, I'm a human being, and I have an awful lot of things going on, and I'm trying to reintroduce, a behavior that used to be supportive, and I'm doing it sometimes, and that's fantastic, which is such a if we could come in and react and respond to ourselves with the, like, "Hey, you did it a couple of times, that's amazing, let's build on that," instead of that one that says, "Oh, wow, you missed 3 days." Like, we just end up responding to ourselves so much differently from that if we're treating ourselves with that encouragement and validation over shaming and guilt.
Yeah, I think that feels like such an important reframe. And if after this my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
You can come visit me at towardswellness.ca. There's contact forms there. There's links to all my social media. There's links for the books. Currently launching a From Pressure to Path 7-week course based on the book, and it includes the journal. You can also just Google Kerisma Vere with a K, Kerisma Vere, and I show up, and I'm happy to interact with people through any of the social media platforms that, I am on. But towardswellness.ca is a great, I call it my wellness hub. So you can go check out everything that I've got to offer and is going on, out there.
Yes, and I will make sure to attach all these details and links below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you. And to my listeners, as you move toward the end of your day, I invite you to notice the tone of the voice that follows you to sleep. And if it feels harsh, maybe tonight, you offer it a softer companion. Thank you for spending this time with us on Inner Light. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, especially when no one else is watching. And do not forget to hit the follow button, subscribe, and feel free to share your thoughts because your ears deserve premium content. Thank you.